People like you do not carry $3 million.
She said it to his face. Then she tore his check in half, right there at the counter, in front of everyone. Once, twice, she threw the pieces at his chest like trash. He did not flinch. He looked at the scraps on his shoes, then back at her.
You just made the most expensive mistake of your life,
He said, quietly.
Get out before I call the police.
He did not move. He bent, picked up one torn piece, and folded it into his palm.
Call them.
He said.
Ask them to bring your boss too.
She laughed. In 4 minutes, she would not be laughing. In 4 minutes, her own manager would walk in, go pale, and call this man, Sir. Have you ever watched someone destroy their whole life in a single sentence? Byron Mercer drove a sedan that was older than most of the tellers inside the bank. The cup holder was cracked. The radio caught only one station, and that afternoon it played soft jazz. He parked outside Halstead National Bank on Ellsworth Avenue and let the engine tick down. Through the windshield, the glass doors caught the low gold light of late afternoon. He was in no hurry. He rarely was. He was 61 years old. His jacket was clean, but worn thin at the cuffs. His shoes had been polished that morning, though the leather had cracked years ago. On his left hand, he wore a plain gold band. He had not taken it off in 34 years. Not once. Not even after Grace passed. People saw the old coat and the old car, and they decided the rest. They always had. On the passenger seat lay a soft leather folder. Inside it was one check, $3 million, drawn on his own account. The money came from a small stake he had bought quietly, decades ago, when no one was watching. To some men, $3 million was a dream. To Byron, it was a quiet errand before dinner. He planned to deposit it and drive home to water the garden. Byron had grown up 200 miles south, in a town that taught a black man to keep his voice low and his hands visible. His father fixed engines and read the newspaper front to back every night. Do the work, his father used to say. Let the work speak, even when they will not let you. Byron built a whole life on that sentence. He had also learned the work did not always get to speak. He had never wanted the noise that money brings. No press, no name on a building, no watch worth more than a car. He kept the same house, the same church pew, the same barber for 30 years. His wealth lived in patience and in ledgers, not in show. That was how a man like him moved through a room like this one. Quiet, careful, underestimated on purpose, and then again by accident. He stepped inside at 10 minutes to 5. The air conditioning hummed and smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and cold coffee. The marble floor threw back the click of every heel. A row of pendant lights washed the lobby in a clean, expensive white. Somewhere, a printer whirred and fell silent. The branch served Maple Hollow, a suburb of clipped lawns and German cars. Its customers wore linen and quiet gold. Byron looked like none of them, and he felt every eye register it. Behind the manager's desk sat Diane Prescott. Early 40s, blonde hair pinned tight, blazer sharp at the shoulders. She ran this branch like a private club with an invisible door. She noticed Byron the moment the glass swung shut behind him. Her gaze slid over the coat, the shoes, the folder, held in one careful hand. Her mouth thinned to a line. She did not rise. She did not smile. She had already decided something about him, and she had not heard him speak. At the counter, a young teller named Kyle Bradshaw caught her look and matched it with a smirk. He had learned the branch's habits fast, and its habits included Diane. 2 windows down, Emma Callahan glanced up from her drawer. She was 23, 3 weeks in, still soft enough to feel a room turn cold. She watched the old man cross the floor, and something in her stomach pulled tight. She could not have said why. Not then. A woman in a cream coat stepped in front of him, without a glance, and Byron moved back to let her pass. Kyle waved her forward with a bright, practiced smile. Then his eyes returned to Byron, and the smile cooled 10 degrees. Byron saw it. He saw everything. He simply folded his hands on the counter and waited, patient as stone. The minute hand crawled, and the lobby agreed, silently, to pretend he was not there. He set the folder down at last with both hands. He waited to be seen, the way he had waited most of his life. Outside, the gold light slid off the glass and pooled on the marble near his shoes. Above the vault, a wide clock ticked toward closing. No one in that lobby knew his name, or what it meant on the top floor of a tower downtown. In 20 minutes, every person there would learn it. For a long minute, no one came. Byron stood with his folder squared on the counter and his hands folded on top of it. Emma began to rise from her window to help him. Before she could, a sharp voice cut across the lobby. Diane Prescott had left her desk. She crossed the floor with the brisk click of a woman who had decided to handle something herself, and quickly, Byron greeted her with a small nod. "Good afternoon. I would like to deposit a check, please." He opened the folder and slid it forward. The paper inside was pale green, printed clean, the numbers crisp and dark. Diane did not look at the check. She looked at him instead. At the frayed cuff, the thin shoulders, the calm brown eyes that did not drop away from hers. "A deposit," she repeated, as if the word itself amused her. "Into which account?" "My account. Here, at this branch." He gave the number from memory, steady as a prayer. She typed it in, and something flickered across her screen that she did not expect. Her chin lifted a notch. "And where does a check this size come from?" "The sale of an investment," he said simply. "It cleared through the issuing bank this morning. You are welcome to confirm it right now." She let his words hang in the air, then smiled the way people smile when they have already stopped listening. "Sir, checks like this do not just walk in off the street. Do you have any idea what $3 million looks like to a branch like ours? The same as it looks anywhere?" Byron said. "A number on a page. Please, verify it." "I intend to verify you first," she said. She asked for his driver's license. He gave it. She asked for a second form of identification. He gave that as well, sliding each card across the counter without a word of protest. She held them up to the light, turned them over, frowned at them. "These could be anything," she said. "They are what the state issued me," he answered. Above them, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, a thin electric hum under everything. A phone rang twice at an empty desk and then gave up. Kyle drifted over to the next window, arms crossed, mouth curled. "You would be surprised," he said, "to no one and to everyone. How many of these turn out to be fake?" Diane nodded, pleased to have an audience now. "Exactly. We catch fraud in here every single week." An older customer near the ropes chuckled under his breath. "They always try it near closing," he said to his wife, loud enough to carry. She hushed him, but she was smiling. The comment traveled the lobby like a small permission. Now, it was not just Diane against the old man. It was the whole room, nodding along, certain they were watching a criminal get caught. Byron's jaw tightened once, then loosened. He had stood in this exact scene before. A car dealership, 30 years back, when a salesman asked 3 times if he could really afford the truck. A country club that lost his reservation the moment he arrived in person. His father's voice came to him then, low and certain, the way it always did. "Do the work. Let the work speak. Keep your hands where they can see them, and never give them the anger they are hunting for." The check in the folder was not vanity. Byron had sold a piece of a company he helped keep alive through 2 recessions. It now employed 400 people in 3 states. The $3 million was the last of it, set aside for a scholarship fund in Grace's name. He had chosen this branch, her branch once, because it sat close to the cemetery. He had planned to visit her after. None of that showed on his face. Heads turned across the lobby. A man in a golf shirt lowered his coffee and lifted his phone to film. A mother drew her daughter a step closer to her hip. The woman in the cream coat watched over her shoulder with open, casual interest, as if this were television. No one said a word in his defense. In a room full of people, Byron stood completely alone, and every person there felt it and chose the safety of silence. "You can settle this in 30 seconds, Byron said. His voice never rose. "Call the number printed on the check. Ask for the issuing officer by name. Give them the reference code and they will confirm the funds while we stand here." It was a reasonable request, spoken in a reasonable tone. That, more than anything else, seemed to irritate her. Reasonable was not the story she had already written about him in her head. "Let me guess," Diane said, leaning in with a thin, knowing smile. "You came into some money. A settlement, maybe. A relative you barely knew." She said it as though generosity itself turned suspicious when it landed on someone like him. "That is quite a story. You have invented an entire life for me," Byron said, "and you have not gotten a single part of it right." "I am not calling anybody," Diane said. "You do not get to hand me instructions in my own branch." She tapped a few keys, hard. "In fact, I am flagging this account for review. Every dollar in it, frozen, until we know how it really got there." "That account is 30 years old," Byron said. For the first time, a thread of steel slid under the calm. "Be very careful with what you touch." "Is that a threat?" She said it loudly, for the phones and the crowd. "Did everyone hear that?" "He threatened me." "I stated a fact," Byron said. "You are confusing the two." She held the check between two fingers now, away from her body, like something dirty pulled from a drain. "This is going to security, and you can wait for the police out on the sidewalk." She glanced toward the far wall, where a security guard named Travis Boyd leaned by the door with his thumbs in his belt. "Travis," she called, "stay close. I may need you." The guard straightened and took 2 slow steps in. Byron did not turn to look at him. He kept his eyes on Diane and his hands flat and visible on the counter, exactly as a boy in a small town had been taught a lifetime ago. At her window, Emma found her voice, small but there. "Diane, we could just call the issuing bank. It would take 1 minute, and then—" "Emma," the name came down flat and hard as a dropped ledger. "Go count your drawer. Now." The young woman sat, cheeks burning, hands trembling over the cash tray. She looked at Byron and mouthed something like, "Sorry." He answered with the smallest nod. "Not your fault," it said. Diane turned the check over and over, hunting for a flaw she could point to. "Whose name is actually on this?" she demanded. "Because I promise you, it is not going to be yours." "Read it," Byron said quietly. So she read it. Her eyes tracked across the printed name, and for half a heartbeat the certainty in her face slipped. Something there did not match the story. Then she shoved the doubt back down. For a moment the whole lobby seemed to lean in. The man with the phone stepped sideways for a better angle. Kyle grinned like a boy at a schoolyard fight. The woman in the cream coat had stopped pretending to read the brochures. Diane felt all of it, that warm pressure of an audience, and it pushed her the wrong way, the way crowds so often do. "I want him out," Diane said, though no one had moved to remove him. She was performing now, for the phones, for the crowd, for some private tally she kept of her own importance. "We do not serve people who come in here to scam us." The word scam rang out over the marble. A few heads nodded. Emma stared at her drawer and did not count a single bill. Because backing off now meant admitting she had been wrong. Loudly, in front of a filming crowd, a smirking teller, and a girl she had just humiliated. So she did what cornered people do. She doubled down. "Names can be printed," she announced. "Anyone with a laptop can print a name." She raised the check high so the whole lobby could see it, like evidence at a trial. "This is a forgery. I have handled 1,000 real checks, and I am telling all of you, this one is fake." The buzzing lights seemed louder now, or maybe the room had simply gone that quiet. Somewhere a phone camera zoomed with a soft digital click. Byron looked at the pale green paper trembling in her grip, then at her knuckles going white around it. He had watched a great many people talk themselves past the point of no return. And still, he did not step back. He had never once, in 61 years, given a person like her the satisfaction of his fear. She did not wait for permission, and she did not look for the truth. She looked at Byron, and she tore the check in half. The sound of it was small and final, a soft rip that carried across the silent lobby. Then she tore it again, into quarters, slower the second time, watching his face for the break that never came. "People like you do not carry $3 million, she said, and she threw the pieces at his chest. The scraps fluttered down between them. One caught on his lapel, then slid to the marble with the others, pale green confetti around a pair of cracked but polished shoes. Byron did not raise his voice. He did not raise his hand. He looked down at the ruined paper, then lifted his eyes to hers, calm as a closed door. "You just made the most expensive mistake of your life," he said. He said it quietly, almost kindly, which was somehow worse. Diane's smile flickered, then hardened over the crack. "Are you threatening me again?" "No," Byron said. "I am telling you what happens next. There is a difference, and you are about to learn it." That was when she reached for the phone. Not the branch line. Her own cell. Pulled from her blazer pocket with a flourish. 3 digits punched hard enough to hear. "Yes. I need police at Halstead National on Ellsworth. A man is refusing to leave. He passed a fraudulent check, and he threatened a bank employee. None of it was true." She said it into the phone while looking straight at him. Her voice climbed for the dispatcher and for the crowd at once. "He is aggressive." "Yes. I feel unsafe." Byron stood 4 feet away with his hands folded and his shoulders low. A child could have seen there was no danger in him, but the word unsafe has a weight all its own, and she swung it like a hammer. Somewhere near the ropes, another phone rose to film. The little red dots multiplied. Diane was not finished with him even now. She stepped out from behind the counter and closed some of the distance, close enough that he could see the powder settling in the lines around her mouth. "You think you can walk in here and intimidate my staff?" she said, low and vicious, for him alone. "I have put away men who look a lot more convincing than you. It was a strange thing to be proud of." She was proud of it anyway. "Give them the reference code while you have them," Byron said. "It is printed at the bottom of the check you just destroyed, or what is left of it." He nodded down at the scraps. "They will want it for the report." The dispatcher's voice buzzed in her ear. Diane turned her shoulder to him, as if she could delete him by facing away. He waited, patient, the way water waits at the top of a dam. "Travis." She snapped her fingers without looking. "Remove him. Now." The guard hesitated for the length of one breath. Travis Boyd was a big man, easy in his own size, and he had watched the whole thing from the door. He knew the difference between a threat and an old man with a folder. But a paycheck is a leash, and hers was the hand that signed his. So he crossed the floor and closed a wide hand around Byron's upper arm. "Come on, sir. Let us step outside." His grip was firmer than his voice. Byron did not resist. He let himself be turned toward the doors. He moved with the slow dignity of a man who had decided long ago that he would not run for anyone. But he spoke, low, meant only for the guard. "Son, you are going to remember this day for the rest of your life." Travis walked him past the ropes, past the row of frozen customers, past the pendant lights and the cold marble columns. "Keep moving," the guard murmured, not unkind. A woman pulled her purse tight to her chest as Byron passed, as though age and a worn coat might reach out and take it. He noticed. He always noticed. He gave her a small, courteous nod anyway, and she looked away, ashamed and relieved at the same time. Something in the words made Travis loosen his grip half an inch. He did not let go, but he felt it, the way you feel a wrong turn a moment before the map confirms it. He glanced back at Diane. She was still on the phone, still performing, chin high, eyes bright with the certainty of someone who has never once been made to pay. Emma stood up at her window. This time she did not whisper. "Stop. Please, everyone, just stop." Her voice shook, but it carried. "We can call the issuing bank right now. I will call it myself." "Sit down, Emma," Diane hissed, hand over the phone. "One more word and you are done here." The girl froze between her conscience and her rent, and the room watched her lose a fight she was too new to win. No one else moved. Not the man in the golf shirt, filming in landscape now for the better frame. Not the mother, who had turned her daughter's face away but stayed to watch herself. Not the customer who had chuckled, now silent, sensing something had tilted. A whole lobby of decent people, each waiting for someone braver to go first. That is how it always happens. Not with a mob, with an audience. At the counter, Kyle leaned toward another teller and said something behind his hand, and the two of them laughed, quick and quiet. It was the laugh that did it. More than the grip on his arm, or the pieces on the floor. The casual, comfortable laughter of people who were certain, all the way down, that the world had sorted everyone correctly, and that he had landed exactly where he belonged. Byron let the guard walk him 3 steps toward the glass. Inside, he was very still. He thought of his father's hands, black with engine grease, turning the pages of a newspaper no one believed he could read. He thought of Grace, and the scholarship that was supposed to carry her name into rooms she was never allowed to enter. He thought, "This is not the worst they have done to me." And then, almost gently, "This will be the last time they do it here." The doors were close now. Byron could see the parking lot through the glass, the gold light going amber, his old sedan waiting at the curb. In his right hand, still folded into his palm, was the single, torn piece he had picked up, a corner of the check, a fragment of a number too large for this room to believe. He held it like a man holds the one true thing in a house of liars. Behind him, Diane ended the call and slid the phone back into her pocket. "Police are on the way," she announced, to the lobby, to the cameras, to herself. "You are welcome." A few people nodded, uneasy now, but still nodding. She smoothed her blazer and walked back to her desk as though she had done a hard job well. She had already begun to rehearse the version she would tell later. Travis reached out and pushed the door open. Cool evening air slipped in across the marble. And in that exact moment, a second figure stepped through from the other side, briefcase in hand, a lanyard swinging at his chest. A tall man in a gray suit, mid-50s, silver at the temples. He stopped 1 pace inside the door. He looked at the guard. He looked at the old man being marched out by the arm, and every drop of color drained from his face. The man in the gray suit was Gregory Sinclair, regional president for the entire Eastern Division. He had driven 40 minutes to this branch for a private meeting he could not afford to miss. He knew the face in the guard's grip. He had shaken that hand across a mahogany table more than once. His briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a flat, loud slap. Mr. Mercer. The name came out cracked, barely a whisper, and yet it stopped the entire lobby cold. Travis felt his own certainty die in his hand, and he let go at once. Diane looked up from her desk, still half smiling, not yet understanding. "Mr. Sinclair," she started, "we had a situation with a fraudulent—" "Stop talking," Sinclair did not shout. He crossed the marble fast, straightening his jacket, and stopped in front of Byron with his head slightly bowed. "Sir, I am so sorry. I did not know you were coming in today." The word "sir" landed in that room like a stone through glass. Somewhere a phone camera caught it, and that clip would outlive every person standing there. You could watch the understanding move through the crowd 1 face at a time. The man in the golf shirt lowered his phone, then raised it again, sensing the story had just become something bigger. The customer who chuckled took a slow step back, and Diane Prescott, still standing behind her desk, felt the first cold finger of a fear she did not yet have a name for. Byron bent, unhurried, and picked up Sinclair's fallen briefcase. He held it out to the younger man with both hands. "The way you return something to a friend. Gregory," he said. "Good to see you. Though I have to say, your Ellsworth branch could use some work." He glanced back once at the torn pieces on the floor, pale green against the marble. "We should talk about that. All of us." Sinclair took the briefcase with both hands, and he did not seem to know what to do with them afterward. His fingers trembled around the handle. 40 minutes ago, he had rehearsed this meeting in the car. The numbers, the pitch, the careful courtesies. He had not rehearsed finding the man himself, pinned by a security guard in the lobby. "Sir, please," he said. "Come away from the door. Sit. Anywhere. My office. Please." Byron did not move toward the office. He stayed where he was, near the scattered green paper, because leaving now would let the room forget what it had done. Diane came around her desk with a bright, brittle smile, the one she used on auditors. "Gregory, I am so glad you are here. We caught a fraud attempt. This man tried to pass a fake $3 million check." She said it as though she expected thanks. Sinclair looked at her the way you look at someone standing in the middle of a road. "A fake check," he repeated. "Do you know who this is?" "A customer who became aggressive," Diane said, though her smile was starting to slip. "I followed protocol. I called the police." "You called the police." Sinclair closed his eyes for a second, as if the floor had moved under him. "Diane," he said, opening them again, "this is Byron Mercer." The name meant nothing to her, and it showed, so he gave her the rest, slowly, so the whole listening lobby could hear it too. "Mr. Mercer is the founder of Ardent Capital Partners. Ardent is the single largest institutional client this bank has. Not this branch, this bank." He let that sit. "The man you had dragged toward the door holds more of our future in his hands than anyone in this building." The blood was leaving Diane's face now, a slow tide going out. Sinclair was not finished. "We are 3 weeks from closing a $480 million partnership with his fund. I flew our numbers past his analysts myself." He gestured, helpless, at the torn scraps on the marble. "And the $3 million check you just ripped up and threw at him. That was not a scam. That was him, depositing his own money at his own bank." Byron said nothing to correct him, and nothing to soften it. He stood there in his worn coat, the same coat that had told Diane everything she thought she needed to know. That was the cruel joke of it. The coat had been right about him all along. It belonged to a man who had never needed to prove a thing to anyone. For a moment, no one in the lobby breathed. The pale green pieces on the floor were not evidence anymore. They were a mistake with a number on it, scattered across the marble for everyone to photograph. The man in the golf shirt had stopped narrating to his phone. He was simply filming now, steady, both hands, the way people film a building that has started to fall. "I did not know," Diane said. Her voice had lost its edge and found a thinner one. "He did not say who he was. How was I supposed to know? He came in dressed like that. He did not look like." She stopped, one heartbeat too late. "Like what?" Byron asked. It was the first thing he had said in a while, and the quiet of it cut deeper than a shout. "Finish the sentence. Everyone is listening." She did not finish it. She could not with the phones up and the regional president standing there, and her own words already looping in a dozen recordings. "I was following protocol," she tried again, retreating to the only sentence she had left. "Protocol," Byron said gently, "does not tell you to tear up a man's check and throw it in his face. That part was yours. You added that yourself." The customer, who had chuckled about people trying it near closing, was very quiet now. The woman who had clutched her purse had set it down, as if holding it had become unbearable. Somewhere in the back, a man said, softly, "Oh my God." The story they had all agreed on 20 minutes ago had turned inside out, and now it pointed back at them. Byron crouched then, slow and deliberate, and began to gather the torn scraps from the floor. One piece, then another, into his cupped palm. Sinclair started forward to help, and Byron lifted a hand, a small motion that stopped a regional president in his tracks. He wanted to pick them up himself. He wanted the room to watch him do it. Dignity, his father had taught him, is not given to you. Sometimes you kneel down and collect it off the floor yourself. He rose with the pieces in his hand and looked, for the first time, at the whole crowd. Not with anger, with something quieter and heavier. "Every one of you watched," he said. "Not one of you asked a single question." He was not shouting. He did not need to. A young woman at that window asked the question, "Remember her name." The rest of you looked away. Emma, at her window, began to cry without a sound. Sinclair turned to the guard, who was still standing too close, hands useless at his sides. "Travis, go to the door and wait for the police. When they arrive, you will tell them exactly what happened here, all of it." Then, to Diane, in a voice gone very flat and very final, "And you, my office, now. Do not touch your computer. Do not touch your phone. Do not say another word to anyone." But Diane did not move toward his office. She stood, rooted behind her desk, and something desperate crossed her face, the look of a person watching a life rearrange itself in real time. "Gregory, please. Let me explain in private. This is a misunderstanding." Sinclair shook his head slowly. He had already made a decision, and it settled over his features like cold water. "No," he said. "You did this in public. You will answer for it in public. Diane Prescott, you are terminated. Effective this moment." The words dropped flat into the marble quiet. "Hand me your badge and your keys. You will not touch a single file. You will not log into anything. Everything at your station is now part of an investigation." Her mouth opened. "You cannot just—" "I can," Sinclair said. "I am the only person in this building who can, and I am doing it now." For a moment Diane looked around the lobby, searching the faces that had nodded along with her 10 minutes ago. Not one of them met her eyes. The customers who had agreed she was protecting them now studied the floor, the ceiling, their phones. She reached for the counter to steady herself. The private club she had run had voted, silently, and she was no longer a member. She had shown the whole room that a person could simply be erased, and now the room was practicing on her. "Travis," Sinclair said, "please walk Miss Prescott out of the building." The same guard, the same wide hand. He crossed to her side, and to his credit, he did it gently. "Ma'am," he said. "This way." Diane stared at the hand on her arm as though she had never seen anything like it, though a man had worn that exact grip beside her only minutes before. The lobby watched her walk the walk she had ordered for someone else. The glass doors opened again, and 2 police officers stepped in, hands near their belts, scanning the room for the aggressive man from the phone call. What they found was a bank gone silent, a regional president in a gray suit, and an old black man holding torn paper in his cupped hand. "We got a call about a fraud in progress," the first officer said. "A threat to an employee." "You did," Sinclair said. "The call was false. I would like to report the person who made it." The officers looked at Diane, then at Byron, then at the dozen phones still recording every word. "The check was genuine," Sinclair went on. "The customer did nothing but ask to make a deposit. The employee tore up his property, assaulted him with it, and made a false emergency call claiming he was dangerous. The word false does heavy work in a police report. Filing one is not a mistake. It is a crime, and everyone in that lobby had just watched it happen." At the counter, Kyle Bradshaw had gone the color of paper. The smirk was long gone. "I want to be clear," he said quickly, "to the officers, to Sinclair, to anyone listening, I was not involved. I was just at my window. I did not say anything." "You said plenty," Emma answered, from 2 windows down. Her voice was steady now, wet, but steady. "It is all on video, Kyle. Every word." Emma came out from behind her station and stood in front of the officers without being asked. "I saw the whole thing," she said. He was polite. He offered 3 times to have the check verified. She refused. And then she tore it up and called you. She looked at Byron. I am so sorry, sir. I should have stood up sooner. You stood up, Byron said. You were the only one who did. Do not carry the rest of them on your shoulders. None of them fully understood yet that it was already gone. The first clip had hit the internet before the police even parked. A 10-second cut of a manager throwing a torn check into an old man's face, captioned in outrage, was multiplying across screens in cities none of them would ever visit. Diane's name would surface in the comments within the hour, tied to a word she would never fully scrub off. By the time she reached the parking lot, 40,000 strangers had already decided who she was. Byron watched the officers begin to take statements, one witness at a time. He did not gloat. He did not smile. He simply stepped to the side, out of the light, and let the machinery of consequence start to turn. He had built his whole life on a quiet certainty. The truth is patient. It can be torn up, thrown, and called a fake. It still weighs exactly what it always did, down to the last ounce. By morning, the clip had a name. People were calling it the Ellsworth video, and it had been watched more times overnight than the town of Maple Hollow had residents. You know the shape of these stories by now. A 10-second cut of a torn check and an old man's still face. Then the slow reveal underneath, spreading in every language a phone could carry. By noon the next day, it was not a local story. It was the story. News vans parked along Ellsworth Avenue, their dishes tilted at a bank that had gone dark and locked its doors. Reporters stood on the sidewalk where Diane had promised Byron would wait for the police. They said his name on the morning shows. Byron Mercer, founder of Ardent Capital Partners. A man who managed billions and drove a 15-year-old sedan, humiliated at a teller window over a check that was entirely his own. The Contrast wrote its own headline. The bank felt it before the markets even opened. Halstead National traded on nervous money, and nervous money does not like a scandal it can watch on a loop. By the opening bell, the stock had slid, then slid further, a thin red line falling on every screen in the tower. Analysts who had never heard of the Ellsworth branch were suddenly explaining it on television. Somewhere above all of it, in a glass tower downtown, a board of directors called an emergency meeting for 7 a.m. They had good reason to panic. The $480 million partnership with Ardent was not signed yet. It sat, 3 weeks from closing, in the hands of the very man their branch had thrown toward the door. One phone call from Byron Mercer could move that money to any of a dozen rivals. They would take it gladly and never ask what he was wearing. The board understood, at last, exactly what Diane had gambled with, and lost. The chief executive of Halstead National was a careful man named Gordon Hale, and careful men move fast when the numbers frighten them. By 10 that morning, he stood in front of cameras with his tie straight and his voice grave. What happened at our Ellsworth branch was a betrayal of everything this institution claims to stand for, he said. We have terminated the employee responsible. We are cooperating fully with the authorities, and I have personally reached out to Mr. Mercer to apologize. The apology was the easy part. The investigation was not. When the bank pulled Diane Prescott's record at the Ellsworth branch, a pattern surfaced that made the lawyers go quiet. Accounts flagged for review that had no business being flagged. Customers turned away, who later opened accounts elsewhere without trouble. A quiet trail of people, most of them black, most of them told in one way or another that they did not belong. It was not one bad afternoon. It was a habit wearing the uniform of policy. The consequences arrived in the order such things do. First, the state banking regulator opened a formal inquiry, and within the month, Diane Prescott's certification to work in the industry was suspended, then revoked outright. 30 years she had spent climbing to that desk. She would not sit behind another one. No bank in the country would touch an application with the Ellsworth video attached to her name, and the internet does not forget the way people used to. Then came the lawyers. Byron did not need the money, and everyone knew it, which was exactly why the civil rights suit landed so hard. It was not about a payout. It was about a record, entered in a court, that said what happened was wrong. The district attorney filed a separate charge for the false emergency call, the fabricated claim that an innocent man was dangerous. That kind of lie can put officers on edge and get someone hurt. The law treats it as the crime it is. By spring, she was facing a courtroom of her own, on the wrong side of the rail this time. Diane tried, once, to tell her side. She sat for an interview with a sympathetic blog and called herself the real victim, a woman punished for enforcing the rules. She said she had been made an example of. She was not wrong about that last part, though not in the way she meant. The clip of the interview traveled almost as fast as the first video, stitched beside the footage of her throwing the torn check. The public compared the two and reached a verdict in an afternoon. Byron could have let the bank drown. It would have been easy, and no one would have blamed him. Instead, he did something the board did not expect. He kept the partnership on the table, but he attached a price that had nothing to do with money. Halstead National would overhaul how every branch treated every customer who walked through its doors. New training, real oversight, a way for people turned away unfairly to be heard by someone who would actually listen. And the $3 million check, once he deposited it at last, went where he had always meant it to go, into a scholarship fund in Grace's name, for students from towns like the one that taught him to keep his hands visible. He asked that the first year of it be administered quietly through the Ellsworth branch. He wanted that lobby to spend its days handing opportunity to the exact kind of person it had once tried to throw out. Emma Callahan did not lose her job. She was the one person in that lobby who had asked the question, and Sinclair made sure the right people knew it. Within a year, she was training new tellers herself, and the first thing she taught them was the thing she had learned the hard way. You do not get to choose when courage is convenient. The moment either finds you ready or it does not, and the room remembers which. The Ellsworth video kept working long after the news vans left. It showed up in company trainings and college classrooms, a case study with a human face. People who had done what that lobby did, looked away, stayed comfortable, saw themselves in it, and did not like the view. That was the part no lawsuit could deliver. Not the money, not the license, not the charge, just a great many people quietly deciding to be braver the next time. As for Byron, he went back to his life the way he had always lived it. Same house, same church pew, same barber of 30 years. He watered his garden in the evenings and visited Grace on Sundays. The world had learned his name for a week, then moved on, which suited him fine. He had never wanted the noise. He had only ever wanted what any man wants, walking into a bank. To be seen. 3 months later, on an ordinary Tuesday, Byron Mercer parked his old sedan outside the Halstead National branch on Ellsworth Avenue. The radio was still stuck on the one jazz station. His coat was still worn at the cuffs. Nothing about him had changed at all, which was, in its own quiet way, the whole point. He picked up a soft leather folder from the passenger seat and walked toward the same glass doors. The lobby looked the same marble, same pendant lights, same hum of the air conditioning. But something in the air had shifted, the way a house feels different after an honest conversation. A greeter met him 3 steps inside, warm and unhurried. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome in. How can we help you today?" It was a small sentence. It was also the sentence no one had offered him the last time. A sign by the manager's new desk listed a customer's rights in plain language. It gave a name and a number to call if those rights were ever ignored. Byron paused to read it. He had negotiated harder things than that sign into existence, and he was prouder of it than of most deals he had ever closed. Rules do not fix people, but good rules make cruelty expensive, and sometimes that is enough to change a room. Emma Callahan saw him from across the floor and came over at once, not nervous now, just glad. "Mr. Mercer," she smiled. "It is good to see you. You are still here," he said. "I am," she said. "They put me in charge of training. I think that was your doing." "No," Byron said. "That was yours. You earned it standing at a window when it would have been easier to sit down." She walked him to the counter herself. He opened the folder and slid a check across. Pale green, printed clean, the numbers crisp and dark. It was the same kind of paper that had been torn and thrown at his chest in this exact spot. This time, the young teller read the name, looked up, and smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Give me one moment to process this for you." No suspicion, no performance, just the work, done plainly. Travis Boyd still worked the door, though he carried himself differently now. He gave Byron a nod that carried more than a nod usually does. On the far wall hung a new plaque, small and plain, naming the scholarship fund that ran out of this branch. A young woman was at the counter that very afternoon, opening her first account. She was exactly the kind of person a manager had once decided did not belong. She belonged. The room made sure she knew it. Gregory Sinclair had kept his word, and then some. The training Byron asked for now ran in every branch in the Eastern Division. Sinclair had sat through the first session himself, in the front row, taking notes like a man determined not to be surprised twice. The $480 million partnership had closed on schedule. It turned out the bank was worth more, not less, once it remembered who its customers were. Byron never watched the whole video. He did not need to. He had lived the 10 seconds that mattered. But he hoped the people who did watch it carried something away. Not anger, something more useful, for the next time they were the only one in a room who saw. When the deposit was done, Byron thanked Emma, tucked the empty folder under his arm, and walked back out into the afternoon light. He had a garden to water and a Sunday visit to plan. Behind him, the branch went on with its ordinary day, a little kinder than it had been the season before. One man had refused to shout and refused to leave until the truth caught up. That is how it usually works, quietly, in the end.
I made Byron up, but I did not invent the feeling of walking into a room and watching someone decide who you are before you say a single word. A lot of you have lived that. Here is what stays with me. He never raised his voice. He just refused to leave until the truth caught up with him. So, let me ask you honestly, if you had been in that lobby, would you have looked away, or would you have been the one who asked the question? Tell me below. If this moved you, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe so the next story finds you too.